All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I want to welcome you to this is our third event called in our A More Curious Chicago event series. And quick intro about PackBack. So my name is Casey. I'll be moderating the panel. I'm one of our 4 co-founders here at PackBack. PackBack, we like to talk about our purpose is awakening and fueling the sense of lifelong curiosity in every student. We enable college professors to coach student curiosity and critical thinking skills by teaching students how to ask great questions, all while coaching their critical thinking as they respond through online discussion. So that's what we do in working through the higher ed space, hopefully generating a more curious generation of college students. We feel grateful to be actually a product of Chicago ecosystem and startup community. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for a lot of key folks in the community taking a bet on us as founders, and a lot of mentors along the way that have supported us to where we are today. And doing these events is one way that we wanted to give back and hopefully try to foster a sense of curiosity in Chicago ecosystem as well. So that's the intention of these events. It's our third one that we've done. We like to keep the event intimate, and it's a great way for people to meet each other that are like-minded, that have similar goals, particularly interested in these topics that we'll be talking about tonight. So that's a little bit about us. We are going to be doing about probably 25 to 30 minutes of Q&A. And then we're going to jump into discussion. We want to keep the event mostly focused on your questions, and then we'll round out with about a half hour of hanging out and networking for anyone that wants to hang out too. So a little bit about our panelists. This event really focused around some of we're excited to bring together 3 of my favorite operating leaders in the city. Taryn Aronson worked previously as the VP of Finance at Redbox. She is now the COO at a food startup called Tovala. I'm proud to say I'm a Tovala customer personally. And Taryn is an investor at PackBack as well. So Taryn's been a big mentor for me personally, and I've learned a lot from her, so super excited to have her on the panel. Shelly Patel is a good friend of mine. Shelly has worked at Uber for about 4.5 years, most previously. And at Uber, she was in a wide variety of different roles, where she had a good mix of roles and responsibilities, which she'll probably be talking about today. Today, Shelly's role is the GM of a startup called Chef Hero. And that role she just started, when was it again?
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, yeah. So big congrats. Actually, there's a good story about Shelly, how Shelly ended up and found that role. Shelly had met another investor of PackBack, part of our kind of networking community at the last A More Curious Chicago event. And Chef Hero is one of the portfolio companies of that investor. And that introduction was facilitated that way. So something that was really cool coming out of our last event, which I was really excited about. And Keegan Chapman, Keegan was at Groupon for about 7.5 years,
yeah.
In a number of different roles. Keegan has trained and developed, I don't know if hundreds is the right.
Hundreds.
Yeah, hundreds. Literally hundreds of sales reps across Chicago. Keegan, also someone who we've learned a good bit on and from a training perspective. And Keegan is now the GM at Victory Lab, which is a sales training program. So what's really fascinating about these 3 is they've been at their prior roles for a long period of time and have seen a lot of ups and downs, and are now just recently, all 3 of them, kind of in new chapters of their careers in generalist operating roles. So big warm welcome to our panelists. Cool. So just to get started, 3 minutes each. I was wondering if you all could just give your a quick career backstory. I gave a quick bio, but in particular, I was wondering, the top 1 to 3 things that you would attribute to your personal growth story you're most proud of and how your career has actually developed.
Start there? No, you start.
Okay. Thank you, Casey. So I started my career in finance in New York and was learned a lot, was not passionate about investing, and I wanted to really get inside a company and understand how it operated. And didn't know where really to start my search, but felt like a good place to start would be a product that I can relate to as a consumer. And I kind of stumbled upon opportunity at NBC Universal in their digital media team. So this was back in 2006. They were launching a team to help drive digital revenues across all NBC Universal properties. And I thought that'd be an interesting opportunity, and spent the most of my time there on the launch of Hulu. So as I think about one of my proudest accomplishments in my career, being part of the team that created something brand new that is most recently valued at $15 billion. I'm not going to take credit for that, but I will. It was such a special team of people that came together to build something. There were so many people that were fighting against digital video within NBC and within Fox because it cannibalized existing revenue streams, and they didn't understand it and didn't want to innovate. Being part of the team that drove the creation of that was really special, and really influenced the rest of my career because I wanted, kind of always seeking back that energy level of building something new and creating. So after 2 years there, they hired a team out in LA to operate it, and there wasn't a clear role for me that I was excited to move across the country for, and I felt like it was a good time to go to business school. So that's what brought me to Chicago. I went to Kellogg, and looked for media roles. And kind of stumbled upon Redbox in my search for media companies in Chicago. Literally, I went on Indeed and typed in media company. That's how it happened. And they were at the time looking to launch a digital team. That I didn't know that. I happened to find that out, and 6 years later, they launched a digital service. But so I went there to help with their digital strategy and played a variety of roles there. And I think for me at Redbox, I was hired to do one thing, and I think in terms of accomplishment, it was pretty, after seeing what it took to be successful at NBC and launch a digital service, spending a little time at Redbox, it was clear to me that it was going to be a real uphill battle. The board was not particularly, they had never heard of Netflix, and they were not particularly interested in investing in digital. So I liked the company, I didn't want to leave, but I just decided to shift my focus. I kept working on digital, but saw other, created some other opportunities for myself to have an impact on the business, and based on me just kind of reaching out and offering my help, ended up building a content strategy team at Redbox to focus more on the physical side of the business. So I built an analytics team, worked on our studio negotiations, and things I had never done before and had no business taking ownership of, but no one was doing it, and I saw an opportunity. And so I think for me, that was a big accomplishment and takeaway was people are not going to hand you opportunities, find them. And if you're at a company and there's a problem and you see that you can help, no one's going to stop you. So that would be my learning and accomplishment and advice, that I progressed a lot in 6 years at Redbox in a few different roles because I just asked to help, and I didn't ask for a promotion, I didn't ask for a title. I just said, hey, there's a problem, let me help with that, and the rest came with it. That's awesome. After 6 years and 20 different presidents and org changes at Redbox, 20% industry declines, I thought it was finally time to move on. The entrepreneurial spirit had kind of left the building, and that's what I really missed, and was spending most of my, I may be over 3 minutes, I don't know, sorry, I'll try to wrap this up. I was mostly pushing paper around and really missed building. So I left and wanted to get into a more entrepreneurial environment, and through a former neighbor, learned about Tawala, which was looking to revolutionize home cooking with a smart oven and meal service where you scan a barcode and the oven magically cooks you a delicious, healthy, home cooked dinner. And as a working mom, that really appealed to me as a consumer. So while I had like 10 years of a career in media, it seemed like, okay, there's not a ton of like media companies I'm super psyched about in Chicago, but what I really love is working on these products that I can relate to as a consumer, and food is a good one. So I eat food every day. And the product really resonated with me, and then I met the founder and was blown away by him as a human being. So I joined the team. I was the 8th employee. I was charged with standing up a food operation, and I had no experience in, but I had a lot of experience in just figuring shit out, and that's what I did. I figured it out. For sure, my biggest accomplishment was standing up a food operation. We were, shipping thousands of meals a week to consumers across the country, which I didn't invent the way to do that. Other companies have done it, but I had never done it before. It was a really small team and not a lot of capital, and I, no one's gotten sick, so I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, you answered my next question I was going to ask for you specifically, so that's good. And there's actually a great other story that Darren's husband told me of just you being pregnant with was it second or third child, and needing to fundraise for Tombala and kind of flying across the country in just your first year at the role and whatnot. So maybe we can hear more about that later. That'd be cool.
Okay.
Yeah, Shelly, go for it.
Sure. So I guess the overall sort of theme in my career generally has been sort of like the marketplace space, but really wasn't planned. I don't think I even knew that was like a term or like an industry or a concept back when I kind of first got into it. I had done sort of a general like business degree in college, really didn't have a very clear idea of what I was going to do with that. But I started working at an educational publisher, and that is, fun fact, how I actually first met Casey was because we realized we had that in common, even though that was kind of early on in my career. But it was with McGraw-Hill, who I know has been a previous, our previous or current sort of partner with PackBack. But I think that was really my introduction into wanting to just get more into sort of the tech space. It was, McGraw-Hill has been around forever. They were sort of just really trying to figure out like digital education. And they had a lot of good ideas, but didn't necessarily have kind of the infrastructure to execute. They were just huge. They, kind of had some people who had just been in the industry for forever and used to doing things a certain way. So I knew I wanted to kind of get further into the tech space, but just maybe not at, a big company. So I just started exploring options, ended up also at Groupon, and just kind of had some friends and connections there, and really didn't, I think, have an appreciation for how challenging like the marketplace space is. It's I think while every industry obviously has its challenges, there was just so much that hadn't been figured out. When really your supply is super unpredictable, you really kind of have to like manage relationships on both sides. You inherit a lot of risk and all these things we could get into. But so I worked in inventory management for several years there, worked closely with sales, with marketing, kind of different functional teams. That kind of led me to my career at Uber, which again, I really probably didn't realize how applicable my experience was, but just being in other marketplace had a lot of the same challenges. So they're kind of focused on operations, a lot of things around kind of go-to-market strategy, driver acquisition, driver retention, managing city P&Ls, figuring out how to launch all across the world really. And I was there for about 4.5 years. Just recently left for a small startup called Chef Hero. Again, I think it's now like finally processed with me that there's a lot that's applicable across all these different spaces. So kind of similar things like you said, didn't really know anything about the food space, but kind of understood it as a consumer, appreciated it as a consumer, and really just trying to like kind of dive into that now. I think in terms of like accomplishments, one thing that I kind of had to get comfortable with early on, and again, sort of a theme here, is that just really being vocal about what I wanted out of my career and kind of really just being self-aware of like, what am I good at? How can I lean into my strengths? What do other people think I'm good at? And also being honest about what I'm not good at, and that's fine too. It's very necessary. And really, yeah, just like I said, being kind of self-aware about that. And as I realized, like, there are certain things that come to me naturally, certain things that don't. How can I lean into that? And how can I be vocal about it and not be worried that that's like showing off or whatever, So I think that's something that, maybe I think I probably could have recognized earlier, or felt comfortable with earlier, but as I've gotten more comfortable with that, was sort of able to use that to sort of get to where I am now.
Great, yeah, appreciate it.
All right, so about 8 years ago, I was graduating college, and I was the marketing major that thought I could go into marketing and live in Chicago at the same time, where at that point I think they were paying like $25,000 a year. And I wanted to prove to my parents that I didn't need them and that, my college education was worthwhile. So I actually took a job with Groupon, I think it was 4 weeks before I graduated, fell into sales. It was the only job I think I could get out of school, I hate to say it. Loved it, but so first weekend, end up in a room with 20 salespeople with 5+ years sales experience in me. Let me tell you, I cried every single night. I had no idea what I was doing. And I just said, like, okay, let me just learn whatever I possibly can, which is not a lot in 1 week, by the way, when you're living in the DoubleTree, which I hadn't thought of somewhere to live yet. I wanted to come here so bad. And I'm originally from St. Louis, so I didn't want to go home. And love it there, too.
How are you living in the DoubleTree?
I lived there 3 nights, then I stayed on a French couch who forgot to tell her roommate that I was going to live there. So that was weird, too. I was sitting on the couch for the first month at Groupon. So within the first 2 weeks, I overheard my boss say, this girl won't last longer than 2 weeks. So I learned my very first lesson, which was prove it. So I found the best person on my team, and I said, if I can beat her in the first month, I'll make it. That's all I need to do. So I just worked long hours. I shadowed every person on the team that I could. I literally just put a smile on my face in every meeting and had no clue what I was talking about. And I beat that girl by 1 contract. So I was like, all right, I'm going to make a career in sales now. So I kept that same mentality. First 3 years, I moved my way up to a senior sales rep on a top 10 market within 3 years at Groupon, which was about 4 promotions at the time at a pre-IPO startup. So we went public during that time where a lot shifted, right? We had leaders that came from Germany, changed the whole culture. We had, I think I had 7 or 8 managers within that 3-year span, a 7-month span where I had nobody and no one to even ask questions to. So I also learned, keep proving it, you can keep a job here, I think. And so from there, I started realizing that I cared so much more about when my team did well than even when I did well. So it was a good sign for me that maybe I should go and pursue this management route. First management gig, don't get it. So there's gonna be a theme here, guys, by the way. And I lose to my best friend who was way better than me. She definitely should have gotten the job. Second one, lose to my second best friend. Yeah, don't tell her she's the second best friend. But so I started to get really frustrated. At that point, a lot of people would say, okay, like how long do you have to prove it? How do you keep going on, right? And I was like, no, this is right. I have a feeling about this. And so I actually went to Brian Barr, the guy who turned me down, who this will all come full circle. And I said, why didn't I get the job? What can I do? And he said, I don't know if you can train a room. Like, I don't know if you're going to be a training manager, how you would get that job. I go, give me a room tomorrow, and I'll show you. You don't have to hire me, but let me show you. Prove it once again. I went in, I trained the room, and he said, why didn't you tell me you could do that? And to Shelly's point, tell people when you can do things. And so I ultimately got another management gig in the inbound department at Groupon. It was kind of this management gig that no one really wanted. But I said, well, I want to get into management, whatever it takes, I'm going to go prove that I can. I had the best sales team. Within the first 3 months, they promoted me with my sales team back to Brian Barr's team in the training department. So that's where I managed and trained over 200 sales reps. And I'll tell the story about this when you ask a question later and you can hear about how interesting it was. But from there, the VP of sales, I had told him, once you need me to come manage a team that's, revenue producing, let me know and I'll put a smile on my face and go do it even though I love this. So the time came and I was like, okay, here we go. I had a team of 7 years sales experience all the way down to 3 months, all on the same team. Had to figure out how to manage that. Not to mention at Groupon, when you got promoted, they would give you like the worst team in the company and they would tell you like, you got it, you're gonna be great. So I took that team from the worst team in the company to the number 2 team in the company within 1 quarter, only losing to 1 leader, which was the biggest deal in Groupon history. So I still am okay with that right now. From there, we restructured, I think, for a few times. We went BD, MD, which is a hunter-farmer model. I ended up on the BD side, so a little hunger, passion, like to be there, and ended up having 82% turnover on my very first team because none of them wanted to cold call. So I had to rebuild a team from scratch, which once again, I was the newer manager that had to prove that I could do this. We then restructured again right as I was proving it, which was super fun. And I took over a health, beauty, wellness team where I really didn't know anything about books except for that I like got my hair done and got my nails done. And I ended up in this role where, because I had learned how to do my job on my own so well, and people knew that I was just going to do it and prove it anyway, even if they didn't ask me, I ended up getting a couple other responsibilities. But what I learned very quick was I wasn't really getting much out of that, and it was almost time for me to go. I think I was about 5.5 years into the company. But here's when I spoke up. Instead of getting upset and running out the door, I actually had built a relationship with my boss at the time, and I said, can we whiteboard out everything I'm doing? Because I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do next, and I'm not seeing it here, and I'm afraid, I don't wanna leave, but at the same time, I'm okay with it, because I really believe I've done enough here. And so we whiteboarded it all out, and he said, Keegan, take a minute. Please keep doing what you're doing, and if I can't find something, I'll tell you. And if I can, you bet I'll tell you. And I said, okay, great. So we actually had acquired a company called Pretty Quick, which was a startup here in Chicago. Coco Mears is probably one of the most fabulous women I've ever met in my life. And I'm glad this is on recording, you can send that. But she came in, we had acquired the company, and they had 1 salesperson. They said, Keegan, would you like to build out the sales team? And I was like, I don't have to interview. And they said, your job was your interview. So that is one key learning, is if you work for the job you want, even if you don't know exactly what it looks like, but you work outside of your role, often your job could be your interview, similar to taking on the problems and the pieces that exist. So I went on, I built out the entire sales team from 1 person to 30, built it to 10 markets, launched the strategy, the sales process, and trained every single person through that program. From there, Groupon restructured, and we built Pretty Quick into the program, into the Groupon platform. And they said, Keegan, you don't have a job. And I said, let's place all my people within Groupon, and then we'll figure it out. Because at that point, I've done everything I ever wanted to do there. It was so exciting. And I ended up actually taking on a role where I was the leadership development manager. We actually trained all the sales managers at Groupon between the Phoenix and Chicago office, while also going back to run the onboarding program. Every new sales rep that came through our training program. Stayed on for about 6 months, but realized that that buyer wasn't there anymore. Loved the people, that's what kept me there, but I missed the building it and figuring it out, and felt like I knew the answer to too much, which is not good when you want to keep a low ego and you want to stay humble. So I actually left. No job, no idea of what I was going to do. Only with the idea of one piece of advice I had gotten, which was pivot, don't jump. Which was keep your foot in one thing you understand and then jump into something else that you don't understand. And so I kept that in mind, took 4 months off, traveled, hung out, did everything I wanted to do, got that out of my system, and ultimately a leader, Brian Barr, the first guy to ever give me feedback and not give me the job, told me he was going to expand his team. And so I joined Victory Lab about 4 months ago, where we actually find great people, we train them sales, and we place them in tech jobs in Chicago. So it's been a really great experience. I'm the GM there, so general is a very key word. And I handle the recruiting function, the customer success function, the sales function, training, and marketing. I lead all of our leaders to make sure that we create the best product for everyone.
We've hired a few Victory Lab folks ourselves
Yes.
on the PackBack team, which is awesome. Great, well, you all gave incredible backstories and you answered any of my questions.
That's the questions I had. We started
Yeah, so we're actually going to jump into any questions that you all have, and I've got a few others too that we'll cover in. But yeah, questions for everyone.
I guess for anyone of us, what's the biggest challenge you face and how to overcome it?
a lot of them.
Devastating.
I can share. It kind of just happens over and over again. And you think you're going to be ready for it when it doesn't. But I would say when leadership changes, it happened a lot at Groupon, and then if you go to a new company, it'll happen. But I had a few times where I finally built. I'm not somebody that like opens up very quickly to people above me. I don't know. It's like that's something I'm working on continuously. So once I would really build a trust with somebody, it felt like they always would leave. Like every single time. It sounds like a bad rom-com. And I remember it kept like making me so sad, but instead of letting that be the piece where, because probably the 4 times I almost quit my career at Groupon was because you quit the bosses you want or don't have or bad ones or whatever it may be. And I would say like, keep those relationships. What I realized is the really good relationships you build don't go away if you keep up with them. So hence Brian being back in my life. There's a couple other leaders. Coco left before I did as well. And those are the people that I make sure every quarter I at least have something with, because without a little like taste of what they can give me, I actually miss that a ton. So I would say like, don't let those big changes that you have no control over, like someone leaving and it like take you over. Instead, feel really happy for them and then keep the part you want.
Other questions?
Anyone else?
So a question directed towards you.
Yes.
Why and how did you adopt this silent killer mindset?
Okay.
Like the mindset that you want to prove it, that you want
Yeah.
to show it to somebody rather than necessarily getting emotional about it or feeling offended. Instead, you're like, you know what? I believe in myself. Let me show you. How did you get there?
I'm one of 4 sisters, and they're all louder than me. I think it was family dynamics a little, and I found that the people that frustrated me the most were the folks that were talking about what they could do versus just going and doing it. So I think it was more of like not wanting to be a hypocrite is where it started. But then I started to realize that if I just got it done, all of a sudden I was 7 steps past everyone else who was still freaking out about it back here. So it was kind of like whoever could adapt to change faster ended up making more money or getting the promotion or ending up in the right spot at the right time. So I just trusted that that would happen and only controlled what I could control, which was my reaction and my actions, instead of worrying about what everyone else was doing. So I call it putting my rain jacket on and letting it wick off while I stay under there nice and dry and just keep working away.
On this point of, just getting things done and challenging ourselves in order to do so. One question I had for you, Shelly. Example of a time where you've ever had to push your team or that you've been on a team to accomplish a goal that no one ever thought was possible. You had, what was the insight that you had into thinking that it was possible and what was the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely a lot of examples of that at Uber. I think one thing that you said that really resonates with me is like really not getting distracted by a lot of like the noise. Uber goes through a lot of noise, whether it's PR or legal stuff or like whatever. So I think what I would always try to do for myself and for others that I was working with was like kind of trying to remind ourselves like what are we there to actually accomplish? Like what are we doing for our customers? What do we believe in? Like, what are our sort of values and things that we like come to work for every day, and not getting distracted by that. I think one specific example I can think of was just this sprint that we basically had to do to launch Uber in a bunch of markets across the Midwest. And they were these tiny, tiny markets, like towns you've never heard of, St. Cloud, Minnesota, or Eau Claire, Wisconsin, like things that maybe like people don't even realize Uber's live there today. But it was a very like quicker sprint than we're used to, which is already pretty fast. Typically, we could like take launches a bit more thoughtfully and strategically, like still very fast, but like there was certain kind of regulations that had changed and external things at play that gave us like a really quick green light to go launch there, and like we want to be like first to market and all these things and say we were there first. And so it had to be this very quick, not as calculated as we probably wanted it to be type of thing. And so I think there were a couple of ways we got through it. I think.
This is your nice way of saying it was insane.
Yeah.
It was sloppy.
And it went okay. Yeah. If you're ever in any of those towns, like I'm sorry, you may open the
Eau
app.
Claire has great music festivals.
There you go. Yeah, you may or may not be able to get an Uber to come no promises. Yeah, I think there were a couple of things we tried to do. One, I think just like really delegating different pieces of it and letting people own the parts that they either enjoyed or that they were good at, especially because it's had to go so quickly. If someone was like, oh, I have an idea for this, like let them run with it. I think both of you have already mentioned too, is that like, if you find a problem and go solve it, like no one's really gonna stop you because they don't really have time to. And so, you know, someone would be like, oh, you know, I can talk to so-and-so about like a press release, and we'd be like, yeah, go for it. You know, someone else is like, I have an idea for like the pricing model, and we'd be like, yeah, go for it. And so, of course, like, you know, you want to keep it tightly managed, but also let people own their piece of it, you know. I think it also kind of just made it fun. Like, this wasn't like necessarily the most glamorous thing we worked on. I mean, again, these like towns no one had ever heard of. So like, we had to kind of find ways to sort of like gamify it, make it fun, and be like, oh, like how many trips did your market do today? And like, I did 12, well, I did 15, and like, those numbers are obviously very small, but like we're huge in the context.
Cool.
So making it fun, making sure people felt like kind of knew what they could own, you know, sort of what they could sort of just take under their wing and run with without needing a ton of like supervision.
What's interesting about battles is that there is no playbook when you're doing something like that.
Yeah.
Trying to capitalize off of an opportunity is going to be sloppy and messy.
Yeah.
And the way to get through it, as your team's talking about, is inspiring ownership across the team. Let
Yeah.
the team do what they best.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, we had to find ways to sort of like celebrate what was going well. Obviously be very cognizant of like when something wasn't going well. But really just kind of, yeah, making it fun, making it like kind of remembering, you know, what, like I said, what we're kind of all there for every day. Like, you know, a lot of people in those towns are like thrilled to have something like Uber. Like they don't necessarily always get the attention from like tech companies,
Right.
you know? So kind of remembering that, like we would see, like it could be the simplest thing, like a tweet of someone being like, you know, like Uber Wisconsin, thank you. Like, I can't believe I took my first Uber tonight. Like this changes everything. And like, you really take those things to heart, you know, especially in that moment, so.
So, you know, all three of you have generalist backgrounds and now are GMs or COOs. So this one in particular, I'll have you answer, Taryn, your favorite story of a near-death encounter. I don't know whether it's at Redbox or you joined when it was 8 people. You said you're employing over 8 now. How big is Tomala?
We have about 98 employees.
How many?
98.
Okay, yeah.
Production staff.
And you joined when?
I was 8 in
2 years ago?
September of 16.
Yeah, so you've seen hyper growth,
Yeah.
but yeah, any favorite story that you're able to share with us about?
Yeah.
Your death encounter?
Yeah, I think that there's a fun story around what we the launch of our second oven. We were trying to rush to get it launched before the holidays last fall, and we got sample shipped for a press tour, and our team went to New York for the press tour, and we're doing some demos for press, and like we've gotten some to headquarters, and like we're having some weird behavior, but kind of rationalized away why. And on the press tour, kind of realized like there was a manufacturing problem with the ovens, and that sucks. Normally it's not that happy for a lot of reasons. And basically, I mean, it's just one of those like can't fail, figure it out situations. And we had sent our CEO, our chief culinary officer, and our like director of marketing is just like employee number 3 of the company on the press tour, and they FaceTimed with our engineers. Like one was in Chicago, was in China, to like director of marketing and open up the ovens and fix the problem. Yeah,
Because
like
the press tour, what are they doing on this press tour?
we were doing demos of the oven for press.
Yeah.
Like, so you know, like that was kind of important. Like getting the oven working. So yeah, like you know, they had driven a U-Haul or whatever from Chicago to New York with all these ovens and all this food to make sure it like was pristine to arrive, and forgot to check that it worked. Yeah, and we just figured it out, and the press, you know, the press was great. And so I think it's really just being creative and like realizing like you can't, you know, we could have done other things, right? We could have delayed the press tour and miss the holidays and other paths, but just get creative and like recognize your team, you know, and figure things out. And our director of marketing was like engineering ovens, not to go in homes, you know, we weren't like risking anyone's lives here, they were just for demos.
Yeah.
But yeah, that felt pretty scary
Yeah.
at the time. We figured it out, and we'll do.
That's
Like,
cool.
don't tell anyone. But yeah, the launch was a success. So that was a pretty scary moment.
To your question, yeah?
Yeah, I was going after the section for review because you've all spent significant periods of time at one specific company and have a realization that it's fun. Is when you wake up in the morning now to go to your current jobs, is the reason still the same for when you're at Red Box Runner or the Burger Club? Is it still the same kind of action that you're solving, or did that change?
I would say for me, it's probably the same. It hasn't been very long. It's only been 3 weeks. So, but I think in terms of like that same level of just like excitement, really believing in what you're doing, believing in the people, you know, obviously believing in like your product or service, whatever it is. And I think, I mean, what I like specifically was looking for was a little bit more of like the unpredictability, like the near-death moments that we've all experienced. And so I like knew that I was like diving back into that, did so very intentionally. So I think the excitement's the same. And I think even if like the people change, you know, the product changes, like that feeling has felt similar. I think maybe what I've wanted out of my job has evolved over the years, but in terms of like those core like values of what I've been looking for, I think it's the same.
I would say for me, I don't know that I really believed in myself when I worked at Groupon. I just knew that I owed it back to the company because I was still going. I was like on this train and it was going to keep moving no matter what. Where now I took away the feeling of because I can, I should, and instead I want to do this because of what I've learned. But what the feeling is when you wake up in the morning and like, or it's more like when you go to bed at night, you're not dreading getting up in the morning, you have too many ideas that you can't stop them. That's the sign I know whether it's time to stay or time to go. So I would say, yes, the ideas and the feeling in the gut is the same, but I think I am more intentional in believing in myself and what I can do versus owing it back to something that gave me so much.
I think for me, a big turning point in how I viewed my job was when I had my first child. Cliche, but it was a big, like, I think before that, I was very driven to like success in my career, and I, like however that was defined. And I think once I had my first child, I was learned out like, okay, I don't want to stay at home. I want to work, but like it really made me reevaluate like why that was true and what I was accomplishing at work and using my time. So I became a lot more productive and efficient and focused on, well, if I'm going to leave my child every day, I want to make sure I'm growing and driving value in some way. So I didn't leave, and that's where for me at Redbox, like, that started to fade. Like early on, for sure, I think I was contributing, but that stopped, and that was really what drove me to like find an opportunity where I felt like I could drive real value and bring something tangible to the world. So that's my perspective on that.
Question for you, Keegan. Yeah, so someone who's trained hundreds of sales reps and you've seen them progress, what do top performing sales folks look like to you, not just in their values, their behaviors, and then also in data? How do you see it kind of early on?
Yeah, I kind of think of like a three-pronged approach, and the first starts with attitude. Folks that can like reset their head on their own and know what they need to do outside of work to be present at work, that's like what's going to set you up to even have any chance at success. I think that's even outside of sales. So it's like, just something crazy happened, can you reset? When you wake up in the morning, are you fully present when you walk in? The second is like, what behaviors are you doing? Do you know what's expected of you? Do you know what you need to do to be successful? And are you actually doing those things? So to the point earlier, it was like, you can talk about what you're supposed to do all day, you can coach up what you're supposed to do all day, but until you actually do those behaviors every day, you're not actually going to be successful, even if you're a really nice, good person. And the third is the technique piece. So are you actually trying to get better? Like, especially in a sales role, it's not rocket science, but it's ever evolving. So there's something any person can learn. Actually, I've been training a couple people that have been in the industry 40 years, and they're still finding value in learning and adapting their approach as different ways to sell evolve. So, it's kind of that attitude, the behaviors or the will, and then the skill portion and growing. And what you can see in the data is when you look back at your numbers, there's conversion rates on everything. I'm finding that even now that I'm looking at not just a sales funnel, but also a recruiting funnel and a customer success funnel, and even a boot camp funnel, there's always going to be conversion rates through your process. So it's incredibly important that you look at every single one and don't say, I'm bad at sales or I'm good at sales, but instead say, I'm not so good at opening a conversation, or I can't seem to close a conversation, or what questions am I not asking in the middle that's causing me to get an objection every time I hit the sale. So that conversion rate, if you don't know how to pull it, sit down with your leader, sit down with your manager, and have them pull your numbers from the entire year, 6 months, and see how that evolves as you work on that technique and those behaviors. It's the basics and then learning whatever you can.
And follow up for all three of you, one thing that something we've talked about oftentimes is, when there is really strong will, the skill will follow oftentimes, right? But what happens in scenarios when that may not be the case? And it can be oftentimes frustrating for an individual who has really ambitious, aggressive goals, is pushing themselves, is giving it their all, right? The skill maybe just isn't quite following, and perhaps you've all been there in your careers yourselves, but as you see that in team members, what's your biggest advice on how those folks get through that and the challenges that they have to overcome?
I think, at least in my experience, if we do feel like the attitude is there, or the kind of the values, like the believing in what we're doing and like kind of a good fit for the team generally. At that point, I would really want to invest in that person and see what we could do about like the kind of hard skills or technical, whatever it is. I think that can vary a lot, like company to company or team to team. But I think that's where you do have to like have a culture really of just kind of open and transparent feedback and sort of assuming good intent from the people that are working with you so that you can be honest about, like, hey, Excel's not my strong suit. Maybe I can sit down with somebody else, for an hour a week or something, or.
So not being afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, and that needs to be on both sides of things. Like, it's going to be a time investment for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, as if I'm someone's manager now and I need to tell someone that's maybe an hour of their day where they're not doing what I would want them to be doing, but instead they're taking this Excel training or something.
Yeah.
So I have to be comfortable with that. They have to be comfortable with that. And the company, I think, like, has to have a culture that supports that. So that's why I typically, approach those things. But I think it can be hard. Like, when you're moving so quickly, you need to focus on whether it's sales goals or whatever it is. Like, being comfortable with that, taking that time to do that is something. I think it's a lot easier said than done.
Any other thoughts on that, Taryn, especially in hyper-growth environments, and again, to give advice to the team member who's giving it their all, but it's just not coming their head.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to pull an example from an opposite spectrum, which is like at Redbox, when we were starting to mature and be in decline, like, there wasn't a lot of, there was always a little resistance to fire someone because you never knew if you'd get that headcount open backfill. So I didn't want to necessarily I don't know that this is good management, but just the reality of being in a declining business, that if someone was underperforming, I took the stance of, okay, let me figure out how I best utilize this person, as opposed to trying to, you're not going to find a talent at a business that's declining 20% a year. So I think it's I think that was a good learning for me as a manager was, when someone's struggling with something, how do you develop them or find the right role for them to be successful? Because especially, and now that I'm in a startup environment where there's endless number of challenges to solve, and it's really just about prioritization and kind of the puzzle pieces of how do I place this person with this skill of the right challenge so that they can help me be successful and they can drive value.
We'll take 2 or 3 questions.
I can add to that
Yeah,
too,
go
if you
for it.
want. So, I think of going back to the basics. So the way I think about it is when you're first learning how to ride a bike, you put your training wheels on, and then you may take the training wheels off, but you keep your hands on the handlebars. And then maybe once you're better on flat ground, you're gonna be that person that's always riding through Chicago, with their hands off and they're flying. Well, as soon as, everything speeds up, you wouldn't ride down a steep hill without your hands, right? You would go back and you might put your hands back on the handlebars, or you might put your training wheels back on, right? So that's the same thing in any accelerating business, is just because you could ride with no hands when you had a steady goal month over month, doesn't mean you're gonna go triple your goal and go no hands the whole way. So you can take it back and go back to the basics of what made you successful when you were brand new, when you were on flat ground. Likely it will help you get the bearings to ultimately take your hands off as you speed down. But if you start, you'll fall right off your bike and then you're in a hole. So that's the best way that I can think of it, is that's the last thing you wanna do because you're used to riding with no hands. But to go back and put your hands back on the bike will allow you to at least start on the right foot and give yourself even a chance of getting down the hill.
Awesome. Yeah, any other questions for the group? Yes, yeah.
So all 3 of you entered industries that you had never worked in before and were expected to be one of the leaders explaining how to take that market. So in media, in both the Uber markets that you were entering into and in your work previous at Groupon and in your work at Groupon and now in this new growing startup, how did you enter the space and learn enough about the industry that you didn't know about before to be able to assert an opinion, build a plan, strategize, and be confident about that?
I humbled myself, checked my ego at the door, and shadowed them. No, I shadowed every person on the team so much. I was like, hey, I'm going to be annoying. I'm going to be that person asking every question that you maybe don't even know the answer to, but I'm not going to start telling you what to do until I understand. And I did that for a good 30 days before truly jumping in and understanding all the competitors in the space. It was big too.
Yeah, I think it's about being systematic. So for me, it was here's my here to there plan, and what are the things I need to figure out, and what can I figure out from adjacent companies that done, so it's launching a food business before. Our business is different than Blue Apron, but there were some aspects of it, they shipped food across the country. So I I knew that was possible. So I don't know exactly how they did it, but I know there's an answer, so I'll be able to figure it out. So like buying their product and looking at the packaging and you know, calling people that work there and, you know, people, you know, you resourceful about like when you're new to something and exploring, like you can ask a lot of questions and then people won't question why. People like to talk about what they do. And by, you know, like getting help from your team. So I was not, yeah, I think it's being very humble of asking for help. You know, when you're in a small company, like everyone's motivated to make it work. So, you know, we had a lot of engineers on our team that helped me figure out like what our packaging should look like for our first launch. So yeah, I think it's having a plan, doing the research and asking for help.
Yeah, I think my approach has been really similar to both of yours. A lot of listening. I definitely try to like consciously remind myself, like just listen more than you talk, especially, you know, whether it's like 30 days or whatever kind of feels right for that initial time period. I like to just absorb, whether that's listening to things or like reading up on material, like going through PowerPoint decks, like all that kind of stuff. And then I think for me, I mean, I like like finding kind of commonalities, you know, if there's like you get that movie for an example, like if there's something I already kind of understand, think about how it maybe relates to this and like really just asking a lot of questions around that, you know, even if it's like, oh, well, I read about this company that does X, Y, Z, does that seem to be applicable here? Or I heard about, you know, my friends talking about this, is that similar to what we would approach here? So like kind of trying to bridge all those different little like nuggets of information and find commonalities, and asking a lot of, you know, just annoying questions all throughout.
It sounds like a common theme for sure is by all means, yeah, not going through the motions, being curious, asking great questions over and over and over, and really getting complacent. I think you might know, right? Totally. Great, we'll take one more question, and then we have a super secret, intimidating lightning round of questions to wrap this up, and then we'll hang out for a bit and wrap up. Last questions. Yeah.
What have been some foundational beliefs that have led you to success?
I think one of them, I feel like I need to like think a lot harder about that question, but just one thing that comes to mind quickly is that given that like kind of started my career out in like a bigger Fortune 500 company, you know, I don't want to imply that I didn't necessarily believe in what they were doing, but I kind of quickly realized that I needed to be like, whether it was a consumer of, or at least just like a strong believer in what, you know, my product was or whatever the space was. I definitely know a ton of people, you know, that are like, oh, I'm, you know, fine with this job, even though this industry doesn't really like resonate with me in any way. And I don't know that I could do that. Like, I think it would be really hard for me to sort of make that. So ideally being a consumer, but I mean, even now I'm in the B2B side, but like really strongly believe in it and want to be able to kind of genuinely sell it. You know, like if I'm just talking to a friend at like a family member at like a family party, I want to be able to like tell them what I'm doing and like genuinely sell it to them. So that's been a big thing for me.
You know, flip the question a little bit. What are some of the instances of challenges or super stressful moments that you feel like you've gone through where, again, more of those moments of clarity, solidifying your personal values of what leads you to success?
Yeah, there'll be plenty, and I think I'm gonna have a lot more in general, but I would say there's one thing that would let me know if it's worth it, no matter what the time was, is like, I needed to know why I was getting up in the morning. I think about that moment. We all live in Chicago. It's lucky for us. It's going to be -50. Your alarm's going to go off. It's going to be dark outside. Something's going on in your family. For me, I drop everything in the morning. I drop my cup of coffee and probably my breakfast. And what is getting me to walk into work that day? Like, what is my deeper rooted why that keeps it worth it, no matter whatever that thing is? I don't know that I had it right away. I was the prove it, right, or whatever it may be. And then I started to realize, like, I want to impact something. I want to be a part of something. I want to know that like if I'm spending 50, 60, 70 hours, 80 hours a week somewhere, that it was worth it. And so that's what gets me up in the morning. If it doesn't feel worth it, I force myself to sit down quietly, understand what I'm doing wrong, and figure out how to make it worth it.
Yeah. I think we all
Otherwise,
have
it's not worth it.
good stories. And if the question is hard to figure out ourselves, asking our peers or our managers, having that very frank discussion, right? Of like, hey, help me figure this out.
Yeah, a good test on what to do is think back on your last year and think of your most proud moments from that year. When you then think about that, see if there's a common theme like across your proud moments, and make sure whatever that theme is a part of your goal setting for the next year. So if it was helping others, making sure that you have goals around how you're going to help people and how you're going to know if you did so. I've actually had multiple sales reps end up changing their career path because they realized nothing they were doing in sales actually was motivating, was like what they were proud of. Had people turn into teachers, to coaches, to more operations or data analytics, all because they realized they were like working towards something they were told they were supposed to do as kids, or they were doing it to make someone else happy, and in turn, they actually went to something else that made them proud. And let me tell you, when I see those people, they glow. Now, it's like unreal.
My last quick question for you, if you could each just answer it in a minute each. So a lot of PackBack team members here in the room, and since you all three of you know PackBack quite intimately well, I feel like by now, I was wondering, we've accomplished a lot over the last year. We've got big, aggressive goals that have never been done before coming into the next year or two. General advice that you have for the team on the crazy journey ahead that we're about to embark on, all the challenges along the way, et cetera. Taryn, as an investor, you wouldn't mind starting too.
I mean, I think it's, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I spill constantly.
Yeah. You're good.
Things are gonna go wrong. And that's okay. I think, it's taking it one day at a time and like not getting overwhelmed by the challenge, like just focus on the solution. And have, you've gotta have fun in what you're doing, or otherwise it's like, why the hell are you here, right? It's like, I don't think anyone goes to a startup for the paycheck, per se, right? There are more lucrative things in the short term, but I think that's important. Is try to take a step back and keep perspective and not get too caught up in the challenge of the day, but of having that positive attitude and solving a problem and trying to move on to the next thing.
I would say to just not to really wait to be told what to do. I think we've all kind of touched on it at different times, but I know earlier in my career, sometimes I would either wait to be told or just kind of question, like, is this the right thing to be doing? Should I be doing this? Am I overstepping? Like, has someone already taken care of this? Like, just second guessing all of those things. And like, someone's already taken care of it or whatever. Like, they'll tell you, if you're overstepping, that's fine. Like, they should know it's not anything intentional or, anything negative. So like, just don't second guess all those things. And like, if you see something that needs to be done, do it. Like, don't complain about it. Don't sit around just like waiting, for instruction. And I feel like while that'll probably help you in your career, it also just will sort of like satisfy you personally, because most likely it's something that you noticed because it's something you're interested in, something you're good at, and will kind of naturally help you lean into your strengths. So.
I would say reflect on where you've been and where you get. Like, we move so fast just as a world today, and especially when you're in growth mode and scale mode. So take the time and realize, like, wow, we couldn't have done that a year ago. Wow, look at what we did even that last month versus this month, because the goals are going to go up, and you're going to be down on yourself every time they do when you missed by $100 or $1,000 or whatever it may be. But think about where you were a year before that and be really proud of what you can do, because that's what's going to launch you into the next step and the next one, and I don't know, just give you the oomph to get you there.
Cool. Sweet. We'll round up with.
Do I need to
Our
like
lighting
brace myself for this?
Yeah. Ready? I actually toned them down. Amanda had me tone them down. Okay, cool. So really quick, don't stall. Like think about it for at most 10 seconds. Now I'm gonna start yelling at you. All right, Kelly, what was the last band that you listened to?
How like Beyonce's not a band.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with Beyonce.
Beyonce. Keegan, if you could travel back in time to relive pop culture, what would you go to?
Ooh, the 70s.
Why would you go to the 70s?
I really like Blair.
Tara, I don't know if you knew this, but I'm like a big superhero nerd.
Okay.
Is who would win between a fight between Spider-Man and Batman, and why?
Oh man, I mean, my son is like the biggest Batman fan of all time. So I mean, like Wayne, like Bruce Wayne. So I don't know if I'm just gonna offend any fans.
Nice. Yeah, Taryn, also for you, what were you like in high school?
I was a nerd, for sure.
Yeah, Shelly, what were you like in high school?
Also a nerd. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. I got
Okay,
fun of
cool, we got two nerds.
Athlete, and like student,
Two nerds?
but very shy, yeah.
Nice. I was an emo kid. And, I was like an emo scene kid. So I don't know if we need to define that. Cool. Sorry.
This one's gonna be weird.
Yeah, what do you think about when driving your car alone?
Oh, I sold my car when I graduated college, but in an Uber, I'm probably thinking about, oh shoot, what did I forget to do at work? But yeah, that or what am I gonna get for dinner tonight? Because I don't cook. Probably need one of your ovens.
Ew. You don't worry about that anymore.
Being upset about the thing you dropped in the morning.
The thing, yeah, probably didn't tell anyone, gotta clean it up once I get home from work, so sprinting out the door.
Same question for you, though. Go.
It was about driving.
Yeah.
I don't drive. Nobody wants me to drive Yeah. So that's been an adjustment. So yeah, so not
So
really
you're
much
an NA,
anymore.
you're an
Definitely,
NA on this question.
yeah, I'm getting back into public transportation.
Okay.
Every day I drive to work down Elston, I gotta make this right onto Ogden, and there's bikers everywhere, and it's so stressful. So I mostly think about how I'm going to navigate that intersection without getting it, or getting the finger from another driver. So
All right.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
And last question for each of you: what color? If you're a new addition to the crayon box, what color would you be and why?
So I painted my walls, it's called Quietude, and it's kind of like a sea foam, but kind of a light blue, and it's just like very zen. I wake up every morning, I'm like, so that would be it.
Quietude.
Well, it's called that, so I hope I don't, like, I don't like get copyright.
Right.
It's not like that, really.
Quietude.
What's the question again?
If you're the new addition to the crayon box,
Yeah.
what color would you be and why?
Okay. So when we were painting, like repainting our place, we picked this like really great blend of like gray, blue, purple, and it was like some nerdy like Microsoft Gray name or something like that. I don't know, it was like named after something great. But yeah, it kind of same thing, like felt very relaxing. And yeah, it was just
I was
cozy.
not expecting that. It's fascinating.
Cozy.
Microsoft Gray.
Something like that. Like, I don't know. Like, I love it.
Nice. Network great.
Network.
I feel like I've popped out with this a few times. I'm obsessed with my children, so I have like 0 ounce of art in my body, which is like something I'm not psyched about. Like,
So what would you be then?
so, but my daughter loves to draw, which I'm psyched for her. That she has some of that. Like I literally didn't color as a kid because I didn't know what to do. And I was good at it. Which problem, but anyway, so she loves coloring and she's made up some, I think she made this up with a combination of pink and purple. Purple? I've never heard it before, but just to make her happy, I'd probably create purple.
Wonderful. Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I have to say, just in closing, very much appreciate the three of you coming together. Putting this on is always fun for us, and to your dear friends of PACAC, and always will be. So everything you've been able to do for us, and we'll continue to keep in touch with you on means a lot. I encourage everyone to hang around and talk. Everyone here was invited for a reason, so feel free to meet people, hang out, head out if you need to, but we'll be hanging out for the next 30 or so minutes. Definitely, feel free to keep in touch with our panelists, awesome individuals that I have a ton of respect for. So big round of applause.